is that fossil fuel will not go away. And I don't want us to, deceive ourselves as Nigerians and as Africans. Nigeria plays a very critical role in the energy security, efforts of Africa. You agree with me that whatever happens in Nigeria affects the entire West African sub-region. That is why whatever PMS we import into Nigeria finds its way to the whole of West Africa. That is why smuggling cannot stop. If NNPC imports PMS, and sells to marketers at perhaps 600 naira or below, there is no way, that smuggling can stop. Whereas, PMS sells for maybe close to 2,000 naira in the other countries in the West African sub-region, from Niger to Chad, to Cameroon, to Benin Republic, to Ghana. It sells for about 617 naira here. So when smugglers, are taking their, products outside the country, even if you put all the policemen on the road, they are Nigerians. You and I know the answer. If you put all the custom men on the road, they are Nigerians. You and I know what the problem is. And that is why I'm saying that, look, for Africa, to attain energy security, Nigeria has to play a very strategic role. And that is the role that we are now saying that, look, at the end of, at the end of this particular, summit, Benghazi should be able to come up with some ingenious ideas on how we'll be able to guarantee energy security, for not just Nigeria, but the whole of, West Africa. You will also agree with me that the issue of energy mix is no more an idea. It's a reality that we are all going to embrace. But how do you fund the other energy sources? You need to raise the requisite dollars, petrodollars, to be able to fund the other energy sources. And you will also agree with me that the surest way to Nigeria's energy security is through the traditional oil and gas sector, which you are the experts, which you are the most critical players. Without you, whatever we sit down here to talk will be a mirage. Even if you employ the best of technology, technology has to be used by human beings. So even if we import the technology from the West, human beings, who you are the experts here, will have to deploy that technology for the growth and benefit of this industry, for the growth and benefit of, of Nigeria. So it's very important for us to always appreciate that the surest way to our socio-economic problems as a country, Nigeria, is through the oil and gas sector. I repeat, the surest way towards resolving the problems, the socio-economic problems we have as Nigerians, is through the oil and gas sector. So it relies on you, on what you do, to be able to salvage Nigeria and the West African, sub-region on this issue of energy security, on this issue of energy, a mix. And so, as a ministry, we are not directly involved in the operations, of the oil industry. What we do is to provide policy direction, is to provide leadership, for the industry to be able to thrive. So as a ministry, one of the things we have decided to focus on is to ramp up production. Today we are producing about 1.7 million barrels per day, inclusive of condensate. And I don't want anybody to be confused. OPEC doesn't calculate condensate. That is why the OPEC quota for Nigeria is 1.5 million barrels. But also to shock you, last December, when I attended the OPEC meeting, the agreement they had, the previous government had before we came, was that whatever quantity we produce as of November last year will form our quota. So assuming we're producing 2.5 million barrels, that would have formed our quota. But because the agreement was that whatever we produced will form our quota, and we're barely producing 1.5 million barrels, that was why our quota was 1.5 million barrels. Our aspiration this time around, by the time I go, by the grace of God, to the OPEC meeting in November, I want a solution where Nigeria will be the topic for OPEC to discuss. Why do I say so? Our ambition is to ramp up production. It is only when we ramp up production that the midstream and the downstream can also be successful. Today, as minister, we resolved in Federal Executive Council to sell crude oil to local refineries, Dangote and the other refineries that are refining products for local consumption. But the bigger challenge is whether we have enough quantity to be able to supply them, because of certain things that happened before we came. And you agree with me, when I became minister 1 year ago, today precisely will make it 1 year ago, you know, 1 year ago, when I became minister, we were doing barely about 1 million barrels. But today we're doing 1.7, and then UPRC is here. They are the people who traditionally gives us the numbers. They are giving us 1.7 approximately, inclusive of condensate. But I am in regular touch with my counterparts from other parts of the world, and I have told them that my ambition is to see how Nigeria will be the subject matter in November. Last year we were talking about whether Angola, should leave OPEC. But Angola said that the quota given to them was not enough. Angola wanted maybe a little more than what they were given. But I was among those who were talking to Angola to say, look, don't leave. It's better we stay together. Because whether you are part of OPEC, if you are not part of OPEC, you are part of OPEC Plus. You must belong to one block, because oil is a global commodity. You can't sell it in isolation. You can't, this is the market, that's the global market. Let us be together. But in their wisdom, they left. We are not going to leave. We are committed to staying in OPEC and then arguing it in OPEC. If we are producing today 2.53 million barrels and Saudi is doing 11 million barrels a day, I want to look at the Saudi minister's face and tell him that, tell me why you should do 11 million and I shouldn't do 3 million. But when I argue, I mean, the response has been that even the one we give to you, you haven't been able to, produce. And so the reason why, as a ministry, our first objective was to see how we can ramp up production. And it's our conviction that unless the upstream succeeds, unless we produce more, the midstream and the downstream will also not be successful. And that's why when we came, we put policies in place, and those policies are paying off. And that is why today we have been able to increase from, like I said 1 year ago, from $1 billion barrels a day to about 1.7 inclusive of condensate. And how do we increase production? The only way you can increase production is to attract more investment. Nigerians were angry when the global CEO of Total went to Rwanda and said that, look, Nigeria hasn't attracted investment in the last 12 years. Why? We're not there in the last 12 years. So you can't blame us for what happened in the last 12 years. But we are here now, and I can assure you, and I want to proudly announce to you, that we have been able to bring back the confidence of the industry to an extent that investments are coming in. When the president of TUC, was speaking, he mentioned about, the Obeta project, which is just 500 billion. But I can assure you that we have investments that will run to tens of billions of dollars coming into Nigeria. When I became minister, I had the privilege of engaging different stakeholders in the industry, from the OPTS members, which comprise of the IOCs, the IPPG members that are the indigenous players, and the consensus was that the climate wasn't friendly. Oil business has become competitive. All African countries are now having discovered oil, and so Nigeria doesn't occupy that position of a monopoly that, we were the only big boys who had oil. Now every country has oil, have discoveries. And so our fiscals, our legal regimes, everything must be globally competitive. And we have been able to show that our fiscal regimes, our regulatory framework is stable. Our royalty regimes are globally competitive. We've been able to show that. And that is why, as minister, I play host to different investors who are coming into the country, from the IOCs to new global investors who are coming into Nigeria with a view to investing billions of dollars. And so please, just give us a little more time. You will see these investments, coming in. And unless we work together, no matter how ingenious our policies may be, we will not be able to succeed, as a country. And so, for you to attain energy, security, we must work together. And that is why labor plays a critical role. And it's my conviction that at the end of this 3 days, summit here, you, the experts will be able to give us, the silver bullet to be able to achieve, energy security, in Nigeria. You will also agree with me that no country is slowing down production. I've had the privilege to meet with people from Europe. You agree with me that the UK alone gave almost 100 licenses last year. If they truly believe that fossil fuel is going to go away, why would they be issuing new licenses? I don't want, you, the experts, to dissipate too much energy on energy transition. And that was why I told you that in the last meeting in Holland, where the Deputy Prime Minister of Holland was in attendance as Minister of Energy and Climate Change, the consensus that fossil fuel won't go away. I can assure you that fossil fuel will remain for the next 50, 100 years. Historically, no source of energy has ever gone away. But for us as Nigerians, we have abundance of oil and gas. Even though we have decided to take gas as a transition fuel, we can't abandon fossil fuel. Even though we have agreed that we want greener energy, but we also have agreed that these other sources of energy need the cash to fund them. And the cash to fund them will come from fossil fuel production, which we have in abundance, which we have investments that we've had for the past 70 years. So this summit affords us a very good opportunity to be able to look at how we can, do whatever we can to increase production. And one of my, the ways I think that we can increase production is to utilize the idle wells. I've been privileged to see that there are some oil wells that have been, capped since the 1960s. How can you, do seismic work? You have the oil wells, but you haven't taken any barrel out since the 1960s, since the 1970s. It doesn't make any sense. And so one of the things we've decided to do from the policy standpoint as ministry is to ensure that every fallow well is utilized. We're engaging NMPC, we're engaging the IOCs to say, look, when this, crude oil is not extracted, is not in the midst of the current to supporting, local refining, which is the way to go. We want a solution. So that we can look for investors to, explore them, bring out this crude, so that we'll be able to meet both our domestic obligation and also export some to be able to raise more dollars and meet our obligations as a country. So we are committed to ensuring that, we support local refineries with all the feedstock that they need in line with the PIA. PIA states that we have a domestic crude supply obligation. Yes, but you must get the crude before you supply. If you have an obligation to supply refineries in Nigeria and you don't have the crude to supply, it remains something that is written, beautifully written in a law. And that is why the first thing to do is to ensure that we bring enough production to be able to supply. We also want to ensure that, look, there is healthy competition. Part of our obligation is to ensure that we are fair to everybody, to both the small refiners and the big refiners. We are fair to all the stakeholders in the midstream, in the upstream, and in the downstream, so that nobody will accuse us tomorrow of favoring only one, people in one sector. It's also important for us to, state here, and I'll be rounding up. I think they have spoken for too long. It's also, very important for me to state here that members of Pengasem know our problems. We have identified our problems a long time ago. We have spoken enough. The time is solution. What we need now is solution. And as government, when we came, we discovered that we are producing 1.7 million barrels, but we have capacity to do a lot more. But even if, President of Pengasem has an oil block and it produces oil, how do they evacuate it to the terminal? Part of our problem is that our pipelines that were traditionally transporting our crude were built in the 1960s and the 1970s. And the lifespan is since over. Now, NNPC, that is our JV partners, do they have the money to be able to replace these pipelines? I think NNPC will speak for themselves, whether they have the money to be able to do that. And I don't think they have. And that is why we have to go for the global model, PPP. We must get the private sector to come in. For the private sector to come into any country to invest, they must have confidence in that country. That was what was lacking in the past 12 years. And this government, under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when we came, we tried to rebuild the confidence. And investors are coming. And so I want to use this medium to call for collaboration from Pengasm with government. What is government after all? Even the most elementary definition of government is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So you are part of government. I want Pengasm, who are the industry leaders, to collaborate with us. At any material time where you have any concern, please don't go on strike. Come to us. Even if you go on strike, we'll still end up on the table. It is when government is not willing to engage that you may, take the strike option. But please come to us. Let us sit down. Because it is when we have the results that are beneficial to Nigerians that you also can proudly say that you are a successful association. So as government, I want to say that we have identified that even when we have capacity to produce, evacuation is a big problem. The reason why pipeline, vandalization is very easy to do is that because the pipelines have all expired, they are completely corroded, and so anybody can just go and just tap it, and the thing is busted. But there are better technologies, which are more expensive. There are better, pipelines that other people are using in other countries, but they are not cheap. We also need to change our model. As a government, what we are trying to do, as I said earlier, is to see how we can utilize every available field, every available well. Whether these wells belong to, whether are being held by NNPC, or by Shell, or by any of the IOCs, or by any IPPG member, the only way we can increase production, if you have 1,000 wells, and each of them produce 1,000, that's another 1 million barrels. But where somebody has 1,000 wells and is very happy, wants to acquire more, the ones you have, what have you used them for? That's the problem that we have. Some people have this, cat mentality where, have you seen the typical cat that will just kill one rat? He hasn't eaten the cat. You will see lizard, he's chasing the lizard. If you kill the lizard, will you eat it? The answer is no. The lizard will be left there to rotten. That is part of our problem. And as government, what we have decided to do is that, look, in the midst of the global campaign against fossil fuel abandonment, the earlier we produce, we extract this crude from the soil, the better for us. And the only way we can do it is to see how we can make this more available to more players who have capacity to be able to invest their dollars and bring this, crude oil, to the point of export, or to the point of domestic use, to the point of refining. So that we will not be sitting here talking about Dangote needs 15 million barrels in a month, and then NNPC can only give Dangote maybe 4 vessels, 4 million. So Dangote is forced to import. But unless you produce, and if there are other players who can also produce, Dangote can also engage them and buy from them. After all, this is one sector that is liberalized, one sector that we are saying that, look, anybody who has money to come and invest, should come and invest. So let me not bore you too much, but let me just say a few things about, divestment as one of, the points, one of the key issues that, this summit is meant to talk about. We've spoken so much about divestments. The IOCs are leaving, but they're not leaving Nigeria. I've engaged all the IOCs. No IOC is leaving the territory of Nigeria. I need to make this point very clear. The IOCs are living onshore and shallow waters. They want to go deep offshore. Deep offshore is, for now, the exclusive arena for the IOCs because of the volume of dollars needed to invest in the deep offshore. No local player will be able to raise funding to be able to invest in the deep offshore. So the IOCs have made commitments to us. As minister, I've engaged all of them severally, and they said, look, we are not leaving Nigeria. We want to leave the onshore and shallow waters for indigenous players. And if you ask me, I believe that we have IPPG members who have also developed capacity to be able to, operate onshore and shallow waters. And so Nigeria has nothing to lose by way of taxes, by way of royalties, and perhaps in Nigeria, and if Osifo, as Pengasin MC, if he has Pengasin president, if he has an oil block in my community called Lekermo, Comrade President will have a better way of dealing with my community than a white man. In my local government area, we have so many flow stations. We have thousands of wells. If they see, an indigenous player coming to the community, they see him as a brother. As opposed to when they see a white man. And you will agree with me, over the past few decades, IPPG members have developed capacity. I don't know them before. I'm a lawyer. I've never been in the oil sector before. Even when I was minister in 2015, I was in Agric. Had nothing to do with oil. But when I was posted oil by Mr. President's, benevolence, I engaged them. I have discovered that they have enormous capacity. Most of them had worked in the IOCs. Have you seen a typical workforce from Julius Berger that will say at the road giants? Go to anywhere, Julius Berger or Gilmore, or they are doing road. It is your own Nigerians who are doing the real work. The Igbo people are just supervising them. Point I'm laboring to make is that IPPG members have developed enormous capacity. And Nigeria would have nothing to lose. I believe, in my own opinion, they are going to run these assets well. Some of them are already running assets. And so Nigeria will not lose anything in terms of royalties, in terms of taxes, and they will have better community engagement. And if they don't perform, we'll fire them. I have always said that, look, if the upstream doesn't succeed, midstream and downstream will fail. And we have people who are holding licenses as souvenirs. If those people do not use the licenses given to them to be able to raise funds and then extract the crude oil from the soil, we better take it away from them. It's just like you have a brother that you have given a load that is bigger than him to carry. I see a lot of them everywhere in the world. They wear nice suits and they speak grammar, but we have just impoverished them more. They paid signature bonuses to government, but they have no money. They have no wherewithal to be able to raise funding to be able to, do the real exploration. So those who benefited from the last bid round are almost 60. But today, we have less than 10 of them who have been able to bring oil from the soil. Will you agree with me that we should continue to leave these licenses with them when these licenses are not adding any value both to them and to Nigeria as a country? I don't think we can continue with that. And that's why I said, look, most of them have expired and they're expiring. And if anything, Lokpobiri is going to make enemies by ensuring that we revoke them so that we can give to people like Osifo, people like you who are seated here. Those of you who are worked, those of you in Pengasin who are worked in this industry who have extensive contacts to be able to attract funding, to get those licenses so that we'll be able to attract funding and then invest in them. This is one thing that is very fundamental. So divestment is not a problem. Divestments happen all over the world. Our principles on divestment, our philosophy about divestment in Nigeria shouldn't be different from any other country. If we do so, no investment will come. One of the reasons why investment didn't come in the last 12 years is because we're doing things differently. Some people felt that, look, we are still at monopoly. People will not run away if we make things difficult. Everybody ran away. They went to Angola, they went to Cote d'Ivoire, they went to Ivory Coast, they went to Benin, but they went to other countries, and we are complaining that IOCs are leaving. Why are they leaving? You and I know the reason why we're leaving. And we can no longer blame it on the long passage of the PIA. PIA has been passed, we have a stable regulatory framework. It's also our duty to see how we can get our fiscal regime to be globally competitive so that nobody has any reason to go to Guyana. And I've also told them that if you marry a wife for 60, 70 years, and because the wife is old, you too, you're old, you want to go and marry a young girl, by the time she gives you wahala, you will die young. I've told the IOCs that are running to Guyana that, look, you can predict Nigeria. You've been in Nigeria for 60, 70 years, you can predict what will happen in our environment. But you can't predict what will happen in Guyana. They just discovered oil about 3, 4 years ago, and so they can just give you any conditions that may not be globally realistic. But if you go, you will run back, or by the time you run back, there will be no vacancy for you here. So stay here with us. Let's engage. Let's discuss the issues and then find common, solutions. Let me conclude by talking about the issue of oil theft. Oil theft, as you rightly, know, is a national emergency. And today, the responsibility of, curbing that, has been taken over between the ministry, NMPC, and the security agencies, with the support of, the Office of the National Security Advisor. We'll be holding meetings there, and all of us are working together to ensure that there's no way you can eliminate crime completely. This is a major economic crime. There's nowhere in the world where not even America has been able to wipe out drug trade. You can't. But they can reduce it to the barest minimum. What we are trying to do is to reduce it to the barest minimum so that we can get more results from the limited quantity that we produce as a country. And so I believe that at the end of this, summit, we also get better ideas on how we can collectively address, this problem. And all our efforts should be towards, guaranteeing Nigeria, energy security, and resolve the problems of Africa. But if Nigeria gets it right, Africa will get it right. Because whatever comes here also percolates to the rest of West Africa and Africa as a whole. Thank you very much, and I wish all of you a very, very good summit. Thank you very much. Thank you.